The rest area on the Stellar Harmony was always busy during the afternoon shift change. Aliens from a dozen different species gathered there to eat, talk, and relax before returning to their duties. The massive starship hummed with the constant energy of its quantum drives as it traveled through deep space. But here in the rest area, things felt almost normal. Daehyun sat on a bench near the far wall, eyes closed. He looked like he was sleeping, but he was actually just resting. The day had been long. He'd spent 6 hours fixing a coolant leak in the lower decks, and his muscles ached. The bench was comfortable enough, and the noise of conversation around him had faded into background static. He didn't notice the group of Valith security officers watching him from across the room. Isul laughed at something, her friend Mirai said, and glanced over at the human. He looked so peaceful sitting there, so harmless. The humans had been on the ship for 3 years now, and most of them kept to themselves. They were polite, quiet, and seemed almost scared of causing trouble. The other species joked about them sometimes. Humans were soft, everyone said. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom. They were weak. I bet he wouldn't even wake up if someone sat on him, Mirai said, nudging Isul with her elbow. Her blue skin reflected the overhead lights as she grinned. Don't be stupid, Isul replied, but she was smiling too. I dare you, another friend, Bora, added. Go sit on the sleeping human. Let's see how long it takes him to notice. Isul felt her competitive spirit rise. She was young for a security officer, only 24 in human years, and she'd earned her position through physical skill and boldness. A dare like this was exactly the kind of thing she couldn't refuse. Besides, it was just a harmless prank. What could possibly go wrong? Fine, she said, standing up. But you all owe me lunch credits. Her friends giggled and watched as Isul walked across the rest area. A few other aliens noticed and turned to see what was happening. The Valith were known for their pranks, and this looked like it might be entertaining. Daehyun didn't move as Isul approached. His breathing was steady and slow. He really did look like he was deeply asleep. Perfect target for a joke. Isul positioned herself in front of the bench and, without warning, sat down directly on Daehyun's lap. She wasn't trying to be gentle about it. The point was to startle him, to make him jump and look foolish in front of everyone. She settled her weight on him and waited for the reaction. It came faster than she expected. One moment, Daehyun had been still. The next moment, his eyes snapped open with terrifying alertness. There was no confusion in them, no sleepy disorientation, just pure cold awareness. His hands moved before Isul could react. They locked around her wrists with crushing strength, holding her in place. His entire body went rigid beneath her, every muscle tensing like coiled steel. His breathing changed from slow and relaxed to controlled and measured. Isul's heart jumped into her throat. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected at all. She tried to pull her hands free, but Daehyun's grip was like iron. She couldn't move. For a horrible second, she felt like prey caught by a predator. His eyes were scanning the room, looking for threats, analyzing everything with frightening speed. Then recognition flooded his face. The cold alertness vanished, replaced by shock and embarrassment. He released her wrists immediately and jerked back as if she'd burned him. I'm sorry, Daehyun said quickly, his voice rough. I didn't mean to. Are you okay? Isul scrambled off his lap, her heart still racing. She backed up several steps, rubbing her wrists. They didn't hurt, but she could still feel the pressure of his grip. Around them, the rest area had gone quiet. Her friends weren't laughing anymore. Everyone was staring. Daehyun stood up, looking horrified with himself. I'm really sorry. I was dreaming and I just reacted. I didn't mean to scare you. It's fine, Isul managed to say, but her voice sounded shaky even to her own ears. It was my fault. I shouldn't have done that. Daehyun grabbed his tool bag from beside the bench and practically fled from the rest area. He moved quickly, keeping his head down, not making eye contact with anyone. Within seconds, he was gone. Isul stood there, trying to calm her racing pulse. Her friends approached cautiously. What just happened? Mirai asked quietly. I don't know, Isul replied honestly. She looked down at her wrists. There were no marks, no bruises. He'd been careful not to hurt her even while holding her immobile. But the speed of his reaction, the strength in his grip, the look in his eyes, that wasn't normal. That wasn't the behavior of a weak, harmless species. Before she could say anything else, another human approached. It was Hyunwoo, one of the other engineers. Isul recognized him because he sometimes worked with Daehyun. Unlike Daehyun, Hyunwoo was more social and friendly with the other species. But right now, his expression was serious. "You shouldn't have done that," Hyunwoo said quietly to Isul. His tone wasn't angry. "Just matter of fact, it was just a prank," Bora said defensively. Hyunwoo looked at her, then back at Isul. "Some humans don't react well to being touched while they're sleeping. Especially not certain humans." "What do you mean, certain humans?" Isul asked. Hyunwoo hesitated, like he was deciding how much to say. "Daehyun's a good guy. He's peaceful and kind, and he works hard. But he wasn't always an engineer." He paused. "Just don't do it again, okay? For your own safety." With that cryptic warning, Hyunwoo walked away, leaving Isul and her friend standing in confused silence. The rest area slowly returned to normal. Conversations resumed, though Isul noticed several aliens glancing her way and whispering. The story would spread quickly through the ship. She'd meant to embarrass a human, but somehow she felt like she was the one who'd been exposed to something she didn't understand. That night, Isul couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those few seconds on the bench. The speed of Daehyun's reaction, the strength in his hands, the look in his eyes before recognition returned. It had been the look of someone ready to fight, someone dangerous. But humans were supposed to be weak. Everyone said so. They had no natural weapons, no enhanced strength, nothing that made them physically superior to most coalition species. So why had she felt so scared in that moment? And what had Hyunwoo meant about Daehyun not always being an engineer? Isul rolled over in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she decided, she would find answers. She would research humans more carefully. She would figure out what she'd actually woken up when she sat on that bench. Because whatever it was, it definitely wasn't what she'd expected. The ship's night cycle hummed around her, and somewhere in the maintenance sections, Daehyun was probably avoiding everyone, embarrassed by his own reflexes. Isul felt guilty about that. She'd meant it as a harmless joke, but clearly it had been anything but harmless. She made a mental note to apologize properly when she saw him next. If he'd even talked to her after this, her wrists no longer tingled from his grip, but the memory of that moment remained sharp and clear. She'd seen something real in those few seconds, something that everyone on the ship had apparently missed about humans. They weren't weak. They were hiding. 3 days passed, and Isul couldn't stop thinking about the incident. She went to work, completed her security patrols, and trained with her squad like normal. But in her free time, she found herself in front of the ship's database, searching for information about humans. The basic facts were easy to find. Humans came from a planet called Earth in a system called Sol. They'd only joined the Galactic Coalition 3 years ago, making them the newest member species. Their planet was classified as a death world, which meant it was more dangerous than most inhabited planets in the galaxy. Higher gravity, extreme weather, lots of predators. But the details that caught Isol's attention were in the biological and psychological files. Humans had something called an adrenaline response. When threatened or startled, their bodies released chemicals that increased their strength, speed, and pain tolerance dramatically. The file said this could boost their physical capabilities by 30 to 40% instantly. There were documented cases of humans lifting vehicles off trapped people during emergencies, feats that should have been physically impossible for their muscle mass. Isol read that section twice. 40% increase in strength from just being scared. No wonder Daehyun's grip had felt so powerful. She kept reading. Humans had persistence hunting strategies. They would chase prey for hours or even days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Their endurance was exceptional. They could run in heat that would kill most species. They could survive injuries that would be fatal to others. They healed remarkably fast, but it was the section on human conflict that made Isol pause. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Every single human culture had warriors. They'd developed thousands of different fighting styles and weapon systems. They'd fought with swords, spears, guns, bombs, and even nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities. They'd nearly made their own planet uninhabitable several times through warfare. The file listed human military organizations. There were dozens from different nations, each with specialized training programs. Special forces, commandos, marines, rangers, all designed to turn regular humans into efficient combat units. Isol sat back in her chair, feeling cold. This wasn't the image of humans that everyone on the ship believed. This wasn't weak or harmless. This was a species that had survived by becoming very, very good at violence. She accessed the crew personnel files, knowing she probably shouldn't, but unable to stop herself. She searched for Daehyun's record. Most of it was standard information. Born in Korea, Earth, age 28, certified maintenance engineer, joined the Stellar Harmony crew 3 years ago when humans first entered the coalition. Performance reviews were excellent. No disciplinary issues. Well liked by supervisors. But there was a gap in his history. 8 years between his education records and his engineering certification. The file just said prior military service with no details. Everything else was classified, marked with red security tags that Isol didn't have clearance to access. 8 years. That was a long time to be a soldier. She checked Hyunwoo's file next. Same thing. Military service, classified details. She checked 3 more human engineers randomly. All of them had similar gaps. Prior military service, details classified. How many of the humans on this ship were former soldiers pretending to be engineers and technicians? That's not your business, a voice said behind her. Isol jumped and spun around. Hyunwoo stood there with his arms crossed, looking at her screen. She quickly closed the files, feeling her face flush with embarrassment at being caught. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have looked at private records." Hyunwoo studied her for a moment, then pulled up a chair and sat down beside her. His expression was thoughtful, not angry. "You're trying to understand what happened with Daehyun," he said. It wasn't a question. Isol nodded. "He's avoiding me. I haven't seen him in 3 days. I just wanted to apologize, but also, I want to understand. What I saw that day, that wasn't normal." "Define normal," Hyunwoo replied. "Normal for humans? Or normal for what you expected humans to be?" "Both, I guess." Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Humans are complicated. We're good at adapting, at surviving, at doing what needs to be done. Earth made us that way. It's not a kind planet. Everything there either wants to eat you, poison you, or kill you through weather. So we learn to be tough." "But you all seem so peaceful here," Isol said. "We are peaceful. Most of the time." Hyunwoo smiled slightly. "We choose to be. That's important. We're not violent because we have to be. We're peaceful because we want to be. There's a difference." Isol thought about that. Daehyun was a soldier. Yes. For 8 years. Yes. What kind of soldier? Hyunwoo shook his head. "That's his story to tell, not mine. But I'll say this much, he was very good at his job. He kept a lot of people safe. Did things that needed doing." He paused. Then he decided he was tired of fighting. Wanted to build things instead of breaking them. So he became an engineer and came to the stars. "Is he angry with me?" Isol asked quietly. "No, he's embarrassed. He worked hard to leave that part of himself behind, and you accidentally reminded him it's still there. Old training doesn't just disappear. When you sat on him while he was sleeping, his body reacted before his brain could catch up. He probably scared himself as much as he scared you." Isol remembered the look in Daehyun's eyes. "He thought I was a threat. For about 2 seconds, yeah. Then he recognized you and felt terrible about it." Hyunwoo stood up. "Look, if you want to apologize, he's usually in Maintenance Bay 7 during 3rd shift. It's quiet there. He won't be avoiding people." "Thank you," Isol said sincerely. Hyunwoo started to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Most species in the coalition evolved to be what they are. They're naturally strong or naturally fast or naturally armored. Humans? We had to become what we needed to survive. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. But we're adaptable and we're stubborn and we don't give up. Ever. Remember that." After he left, Isol sat alone with her thoughts. The ship hummed around her. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds living and working together in space. The coalition was built on cooperation and peace. Violence was rare. Wars were things of the past for most species. But humans were different. They carried their violent history with them, even while trying to leave it behind. They were warriors pretending to be civilians. Or maybe they were civilians who could become warriors when needed. Either way, Isol realized the galaxy had misunderstood humans completely, including her. That evening, during 3rd shift when the corridors were quiet, Isol made her way to Maintenance Bay 7. Her heart beat faster as she approached. She wasn't scared exactly, but she was nervous. What would she even say? The bay doors were open. Inside, Daehyun was working on a large piece of equipment, his back to the entrance. He was wearing his standard maintenance uniform, and his tool belt hung at his waist. He looked completely normal, completely harmless, but Isol knew better now. She cleared her throat. Daehyun. He turned quickly, then relaxed when he saw her. But he didn't smile. Isol, hi. Can I talk to you? He hesitated, then nodded and set down his tools. Sure. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Isol had practiced what to say, but now the words felt inadequate. I'm sorry, she began. What I did was stupid and disrespectful. I was trying to be funny, but I didn't think about how it might affect you. I shouldn't have touched you without permission. Daehyun's expression softened. It's okay. I overreacted. I'm the one who should apologize. I could have hurt you, but you didn't. You were careful, even while you were reacting on instinct. He looked surprised that she'd noticed that detail. I've been researching humans, Isul admitted, trying to understand. I saw you have military service in your background. Daehyun's jaw tightened slightly. Lots of humans do. 8 years is a long time. It was a different life. His tone was careful, guarded. Isol took a breath. I'm not trying to pry into your private history. I just want you to know that I understand better now. What I woke up that day wasn't a monster. It was just training reflexes. You're not dangerous unless you choose to be. Something in Daehyun's expression changed. The guardedness faded a little. That's more understanding than most people would have. Most people didn't see what I saw. The control you had even in that moment. You could have hurt me badly, but you didn't. They stood in silence for a moment. The maintenance bay was warm and quiet around them. The alarm woke everyone on the ship at the same time. It wasn't the normal morning alert. This was urgent. Cutting through the quiet of night cycle with sharp insistence, Isol rolled out of her bunk and grabbed her security uniform, her training kicking in automatically. Around her, other Valith officers were doing the same. All personnel report to stations, the ship's communication system announced. This is not a drill. Senior staff to the bridge immediately. Isol ran through the corridors toward the security office. Other crew members were emerging from their quarters looking confused and worried. The Stellar Harmony didn't have emergencies often. Something serious must have happened. The security office was already filled with officers when she arrived. Jinwoo, the head of security, stood at the front of the room with a grim expression. Listen up, he said loudly, and the room fell silent. We received a distress signal 20 minutes ago from Research Station 14. They're under attack by Karath raiders. Murmurs of concern rippled through the room. The Karath were bad news. They'd been expelled from the Galactic Coalition 2 years ago for repeated violations of peace treaties. Since then, they'd become pirates and raiders, attacking isolated stations and ships. They were brutal, violent, and they didn't take prisoners for kindness. They took them for ransom or worse. We're the closest coalition vessel, Jinwoo continued.
Captain Taejin has ordered us to respond.
Our mission is to evacuate survivors and avoid direct combat if possible. The Karath outnumber us significantly. Isul felt her stomach tighten. She'd trained for combat situations, but she'd never actually faced real violence. Most coalition security work was about keeping order and handling disputes. This was different. Get your equipment ready, Jinwoo ordered. We'll be at the station in 3 hours. Rescue teams will be assigned then. Dismissed, the security officers dispersed to prepare. Isul checked her equipment carefully. Stun weapon, medical kit, communication device, protective vest. Everything was in order, but her hands were shaking slightly. She'd seen files on the Karath. They were reptilian, heavily muscled, and standing nearly 7 feet tall. They had natural armor plating and claws. In close combat, they were extremely dangerous. Coalition security forces usually handled them by keeping distance and using superior technology. But on a damaged space station, there might not be room to keep distance. 3 hours felt like both forever and no time at all. Isul tried to eat breakfast but couldn't manage more than a few bites. She checked her equipment twice more. She reviewed station layouts and emergency procedures, anything to keep her mind occupied. Finally, the announcement came. Rescue teams report to Bay 3. Isul joined the stream of security officers heading to the deployment area. Bay 3 was crowded with personnel, equipment, and the 4 shuttles that would transport them to the damaged station. Captain Taejin stood on a raised platform, his human features calm and professional. Isul had always respected the captain. He was fair, intelligent, and under his command, the Stellar Harmony ran smoothly. The situation is serious, Taejin began without preamble. Station 14 has 37 life signs in the central core. They've barricaded themselves there. The Karath control the outer sections. Our plan is to dock with the core directly, evacuate the survivors, and leave before the Karath can respond in force. He gestured to a holographic display showing the station's layout. 4 teams. Each team has specific routes and objectives. Remember, our goal is rescue, not combat. If you encounter Karath, retreat and regroup. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. They are more experienced fighters than you are. Isol listened carefully, memorizing her team's route. She'd be part of Team 2, led by Doyon, a veteran Valith officer she trusted. As the briefing continued, movement near the back of the bay caught her attention. Several humans were arriving, including Daehyun and Hyunwoo. They were wearing maintenance uniforms and carrying equipment bags. Daehyun volunteered to come. Captain Taejin noticed them too. Engineering support. We may need technical expertise to access the core or override damaged systems. They'll be distributed among the teams. After the briefing, Isol found herself standing near Daehyun as they waited to board the shuttles. He was checking his equipment with methodical precision. She noticed he had more tools than seemed necessary for basic engineering work. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. Daehyun looked at her. "Yes, I do. It's going to be dangerous." "I know." His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes, a focus she'd seen once before. "People are trapped. If I can help, I should." Before Isol could respond, Doyon called out team assignments. Daehyun was assigned to her team. They boarded the shuttle together with 8 other personnel. The flight to the station was quiet. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts. Through the shuttle's viewport, Isol could see the damaged station growing larger. Parts of it were dark, systems offline. Scorch marks showed where weapons had hit. It looked dead and haunting. They docked with a section near the core, and the shuttle's airlock connected with a groaning sound. Doyon led them out into the station's corridors. The damage was worse than Isol expected. Walls were torn open. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadow. The air smelled like burned metal and something worse. They moved in formation, weapons ready, following their planned route toward the core. It was too quiet. They should have encountered Karath patrols by now. Daehyun moved differently than the others, Isol noticed. While the security officers stayed tight together, weapons forward, Daehyun was scanning everything. Side passages, ceiling vents, closed doors. His tool bag hung loose at his side where he could reach it quickly. They were halfway to the core when Hyunwoo, who was with Team 1, came over the communication channel. His voice was tense. "Contact. Karath warriors in Section 7. We're pinned down. They're between us and the core." Doyon stopped the team immediately. "Fall back to the shuttle." But before anyone could move, Karath warriors emerged from the passages ahead and behind them. It happened so fast. One moment the corridor was empty. The next, massive reptilian figures were blocking both directions. The ambush had been perfect. Isol raised her weapon, but her hands were shaking. The Karath were even more frightening in person. 7 feet of muscle, armor, and rage. Their eyes were cold and intelligent. The lead Karath said something in his language. Isol's translator rendered it as, "Put down weapons. You are prisoners now." Doyon's response was to fire his stun weapon. The blast hit the Karath's chest armor and scattered harmlessly. The Karath warrior laughed, then everything turned into chaos. The Karath rushed forward. The security team fired desperately, but the stun weapons weren't effective against Karath armor. Doyon tried to organize a fighting retreat, but there wasn't room to maneuver in the narrow corridor. Isol saw one of her teammates, Minho, get grabbed by a Karath and thrown against the wall. He crumpled and didn't get up. Fear flooded through her. This wasn't like training. This was real. They were going to die here. Doyon was shouting orders, trying to hold the team together, but they were losing badly. The Karath were pushing them back, separating them, overwhelming them with pure physical force. Then Daehyun stepped forward. "Get to the core," he said calmly to Doyon. His voice cut through the panic. "I'll buy you time." "You'll die," Doyon said. Daehyun didn't answer. He was already moving. Isol watched in shock as Daehyun grabbed a heavy pry bar from his tool bag and strode directly toward the Karath warriors. He didn't look scared. He looked focused, calm, like he was going to do a job that needed doing. The first Karath swung a clawed hand at him. Daehyun ducked under it with fluid grace and the pry bar swung up in a precise arc. It struck the Karath's wrist joint and there was a crack. The Karath roared in pain. Daehyun was already moving to the next target. He fought nothing like the security team. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion. Every strike hit joints, weak points, places where armor didn't protect. He used the narrow corridor to his advantage, preventing the Karath from surrounding him. Hyunwoo's voice came over the communication channel again. "Need help there?" "We're pinned," Doyeon replied. "Copy that." 30 seconds later, Hyunwoo and 2 other human engineers appeared from a side passage. They didn't discuss what to do. They just moved into formation with Daehyun, covering angles, working together like they'd done it 1,000 times before. The Karath realized too late they weren't fighting maintenance workers. They were fighting something else entirely. The corridor became a battle zone. The humans didn't try to fight fair. They used everything around them as weapons. Exposed pipes became clubs. Electrical panels became traps. A fire suppression system became a distraction. They worked together with silent coordination and the Karath started falling back. "Move," Daehyun shouted to the security team. "Get to the core now." Doyeon didn't argue. He grabbed Isul's arm and pulled her forward. The team ran past the fighting, through the opening the humans had created. Isul looked back once and saw Daehyun fighting 3 Karath at once. He was injured, bleeding from a cut on his arm, but he kept fighting. The core of the station was a fortified area, designed to withstand emergencies. The security team burst through the entrance and immediately began sealing it behind them. Inside, 37 frightened civilians huddled together. Different species, all looking terrified and relieved to see rescuers. Doyeon was on the communication channel immediately. "Captain, we've reached the core. We have casualties. Minhyo needs medical attention. The humans are holding off the Karath, but we need evacuation now." Captain Taejin's voice came back tense. "The Karath are regrouping in force. We can't get the shuttles close enough safely. Can you hold position?" Before Doyeon could answer, Daehyun and the other humans came through the entrance. They moved quickly, efficiently, and sealed the heavy door behind them. Daehyun's arm was bleeding worse now, but he ignored it. "We can't hold here long," Daehyun said, looking at the door. "They'll cut through eventually. Maybe an hour if we're lucky." "The captain says we can't evacuate yet," Doyeon explained. Daehyun nodded like he'd expected that. He was already looking around the core area, studying the structure, the systems, the layout. Isul saw his eyes moving rapidly, taking in everything, calculating. "How many Karath on this station?" Daehyun asked. "Initial scans showed approximately 50 warriors," Doyeon replied. Daehyun walked to a wall panel and pulled up the station's structural diagrams. Hyunwoo and the other human engineers joined him. They spoke quietly in their human language, too fast for the translators to catch everything, but Isul heard enough words to understand they were planning something. Finally, Daehyun turned back to Doyeon. "I have an idea. It's dangerous, but it's better than waiting here to die." "What kind of idea?" Doyeon asked suspiciously. "The station's structural integrity is already compromised from the Karath attack. If we overload specific systems and create controlled failures in the outer sections, we can seal off the core completely, trap the Karath in the collapsing sections while we keep this area stable enough for evacuation." Doyeon stared at him. "You want to destroy parts of the station while we're still on it? It's already dying. We're just choosing which parts fail first." Daehyun pointed to the diagrams. "The core is the most reinforced section. It can survive. The outer sections can't. If we don't do this, the Karath will either break through this door or follow us when we evacuate." Captain Taejin's voice came over the channel. He'd been listening. "How long would you need to set this up?" 7 minutes to rig the systems. Then we trigger the collapse and evacuate immediately." 7 minutes. Isul felt her heart sink. 7 minutes of holding a door against 50 Karath warriors while the humans sabotaged a space station from the inside. It sounded impossible. Captain Taejin was silent for a long moment. "Then do it. But if that door fails before you're done, you evacuate immediately. That's an order." Daehyun nodded to Hyunwoo and the other engineers. They grabbed their tools and split up, heading to different systems. Daehyun stayed at the main control panel, his fingers moving rapidly over the interface. Isul approached him. "Let me help," he glanced at her. "You're injured." He gestured to her shoulder. She hadn't even realized she'd been hit during the fighting. Flood was soaking through her uniform. "I'm fine. Tell me what to do." Daehyun studied her for a moment, then nodded. Hold this panel open while I reroute the power systems. They worked together, Isul following his instructions precisely. Despite the danger, despite the bleeding arm and the Karath trying to break through the door, Daehyun's hands were steady. He worked like he had all the time in the world. You've done this before, Isul said quietly. Something like it. Daehyun didn't look up from his work. Different station, different enemy. Same basic principle. When you were a soldier, yeah, the door shuttered. The Karath were attacking it with something heavy. Joyun and the other security officers braced against it, but everyone could see it wouldn't hold much longer. 4 minutes, Daehyun called out to the team. Keep them out for 4 more minutes. The door shuttered again, harder. Metal began to glow red where they were cutting through. Hyunwoo's voice came over the channel. Section 2 rigged. Another human engineer. Section 4 ready. Daehyun finished the last connection. Core system secured. Starting the sequence. He activated the controls and warning lights began flashing throughout the core. The civilians cried out in fear, but Daehyun ignored them. He was watching readouts, timing everything precisely. 3 minutes to collapse, he announced calmly. The door buckled. A Karath claw punched through and Doyen barely avoided it. The security team fired through the opening, trying to slow them down, but it was clear the door would fail soon. 2 minutes. More claws tore at the door. It was coming apart. The Karath were going to break through before the sequence completed. Daehyun saw it too. He closed his eyes briefly, made a decision, then picked up his pry bar and walked toward the door. What are you doing? Heisel shouted. Buying time. He looked at her with that same calm focus. When the countdown hits 30 seconds, everyone evacuates to the shuttle. Don't wait for us. Us? Hyunwoo and the other human engineers appeared, also armed with improvised weapons. They positioned themselves at the door with Daehyun. The security team fell back and the door finally gave way. Karath warriors poured through the opening. What happened next would become legend on the Stellar Harmony. 4 human engineers against a dozen Karath warriors in close quarters. It shouldn't have been a fight. It should have been a slaughter. But the humans fought like nothing Isul had ever seen. They didn't fight like individuals. They fought as a single unit, covering each other, communicating with gestures and brief words. When one human was in danger, another was already moving to help. They used the environment ruthlessly. A damaged support beam became a battering ram. Emergency foam became a slippery trap. Sparking electrical wires became weapons. Daehyun was at the center of it all, coordinating without seeming to think about it. He moved with frightening efficiency, every action purposeful. When a Karath nearly reached the civilians, Daehyun was there to stop it. When 2 warriors tried to flank them, he repositioned the team to block them, but they were getting hurt. Hyunwoo took a slash across his back. Another engineer, Junho, was bleeding from his leg. Daehyun was accumulating cuts and bruises, yet they kept fighting. The countdown reached 45 seconds. Evacuate. Daehyun shouted. Everyone move now. Doyen grabbed the civilians and pushed them toward the shuttle corridor. The security team followed, firing behind them to cover the retreat. Isul stayed, refusing to leave while the humans were still fighting. 30 seconds. The Karath realized something was wrong. They started trying to retreat, but the humans blocked them, keeping them engaged, preventing them from escaping. 20 seconds. Go, Daehyun yelled at Isul. Run! The humans disengaged suddenly and sprinted for the evacuation route. Isul ran with them. Behind them, the Karath were roaring in rage and confusion. 10 seconds. They reached the shuttle just as the station began tearing itself apart. The outer sections imploded in sequence exactly as Daehyun had programmed. The Karath warriors who'd been attacking them were trapped in the collapsing sections. The shuttle detached and accelerated away from the dying station. Through the viewport, Isul watched the outer sections collapse while the core remained intact, floating in space like a preserved seed pod. Inside the shuttle, everyone was breathing hard. The human engineers collapsed against the walls, exhausted and bleeding but alive. All the civilians were safe. The security team had only one serious injury, Minho, and the medics were already treating him. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd rescued everyone. Isul looked at Daehyun. He was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, blood dripping from multiple wounds. He looked completely exhausted. But when he opened his eyes and met her gaze, there was no triumph there, just quiet relief that everyone had survived. Why did you do that? She asked quietly. You could have died. Daehyun was silent for a moment. Because people needed help. That's reason enough. Hyunwoo, sitting nearby, laughed weakly. Same old Daehyun. Can't turn off the hero switch. Shut up, Daehyun replied, but there was affection in his voice. The shuttle docked with the Stellar Harmony, and medical teams rushed aboard. The humans tried to wave them off, saying others needed attention first, but the medics insisted. They were ushered to the medical bay while the civilians were taken to temporary quarters. Isol followed at a distance, watching as Daehyun was guided to a bed. He'd finally revealed what he truly was. Not a harmless engineer. Not a weak human. A protector. A warrior who chose peace but could still fight when needed. And the entire ship had seen it. The medical bay was crowded with injured personnel, but the atmosphere was surprisingly positive. They'd succeeded. Everyone had survived. The civilians from the station were safe, and the casualties had been minimal considering what they'd faced. Daehyun lay on a medical bed while a Valith doctor worked on his injuries. The cut on his arm required stitches, and he had numerous bruises and smaller cuts. The doctor was professional but kept glancing at him with something like awe. You fought 12 Kareth warriors, the doctor said quietly. I saw the shuttle footage. 4 of us fought them, Daehyun corrected. And we mostly just delayed them. You're being modest. The doctor finished the last stitch. The footage is already spreading through the ship. Everyone's talking about what the human engineers did. Daehyun closed his eyes and sighed. That's exactly what he'd been hoping to avoid. 3 years of keeping a low profile ruined in 7 minutes of combat. Try to rest, the doctor said. You've lost some blood and your body needs time to recover. After the doctor left, Daehyun lay there listening to the quiet sounds of the medical bay. Other beds held the wounded, including Minho, who was sleeping peacefully after treatment. Hyunwoo was 3 beds over, also resting. Yunyo had already been released with minor injuries. Footsteps approached. Daehyun opened his eyes to find Isol standing beside his bed. Her shoulder was bandaged, but she looked steady. You should be resting too, he said. I wanted to check on you first. She pulled up a chair and sat down. The civilians are asking about you. They want to thank the humans who saved them. We were just doing what needed to be done. Stop saying that. Isul's voice was firm. You did something incredible today. You saved 37 lives, probably more if you count our security team. Why can't you accept that? Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Because I don't want to be defined by violence. I spent 8 years being a soldier. I was good at it. Really good. But it cost something being that person. You see things, do things, lose things. When I left that life, I promised myself I'd be something else. Someone else. But you can't stop being who you are, Isul said gently. I can choose how I use it. Daehyun looked at her. Today people needed help. So I helped. Tomorrow I'll go back to fixing broken systems and trying to be the person I want to be, not the person I was trained to be. Isul reached out and took his hand. What if you could be both? The engineer and the protector? That's complicated. You're complicated. I'm starting to understand that about humans. She smiled slightly. You're not what anyone expected. Stronger, faster, more dangerous, but also kinder than you need to be. You choose peace even though you're good at war. Before Daehyun could respond, Captain Taejin entered the medical bay. He walked directly to Daehyun's bed, and Isul quickly stood up and stepped back respectfully. At ease, Taejin said, gesturing for her to stay. He looked at Daehyun with a complex expression. I've been reviewing the footage and reports from the station. What you and the other human engineers did was extraordinary. We did what we had to, sir. I know. That's what concerns me. Taejin pulled up another chair and sat down. For 3 years, I've had human crew members who seemed perfectly content to work in support roles. Maintenance, engineering, administration. I knew you all had military backgrounds, but I assumed you wanted to leave that behind. We do, sir, and yet when the situation demanded it, you transformed into combat specialists instantly. Taejin leaned forward. The Galactic Coalition is going to want to know more about human capabilities now. This incident will be studied, analyzed. Other ships will request human crew members specifically for their tactical value. Daehyun's jaw tightened. We're not weapons to be deployed. I know that. But the Coalition doesn't know humans well yet. They're going to make assumptions based on what they saw today. Taejin paused. I'm offering you a position as security advisor. Better pay, better quarters, and you'd be helping to train our security forces properly. With respect, sir, I decline. May I ask why? Because if I take that position, I become a soldier again, and I work too hard to stop being one. Daehyun met the captain's eyes. I'll help in emergencies. I'll protect this crew when needed, but I won't make violence my job again. Taejin studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I understand. The offer remains open if you change your mind. He stood up. Rest well. You've earned it. After the captain left, Isul sat back down. You really meant that? About not wanting to be a soldier? Yes. Even though you're so good at it? Especially because I'm good at it. Daehyun looked at the ceiling. It's easy to fall back into that life. To let the training take over. To become the weapon instead of the person. I've seen it happen to others. I won't let it happen to me. Over the following days, life on the Stellar Harmony slowly returned to normal. The rescued civilians were transferred to another coalition vessel. The damaged station was salvaged for parts. Reports were filed and investigations were conducted, but everything had changed. The human crew members were no longer invisible. Other species acknowledged them in the corridors, asked them questions, treated them with new respect. Some with admiration, others with wariness. The illusion of human weakness had been shattered completely. Daehyun noticed the change but tried to ignore it. He returned to his maintenance duties as soon as the doctor cleared him. He fixed broken equipment, calibrated systems, and helped keep the ship running. He did the job he'd signed up for, but people watched him differently now. They knew what he was capable of. Isul found him in Maintenance Bay 7 during third shift just like before. He was working on a power distribution panel, focused and calm. She'd sought him out every evening since the rescue, and they'd fallen into an easy friendship. More than friendship, really. Something deeper was growing between them. The Coalition released their report today, Isul said, sitting on a nearby crate. They're calling it a successful rescue mission with minimal casualties. They mentioned the human tactical response specifically. Of course they did. Is that so bad? Humans proved you're valuable members of the Coalition. Daehyun set down his tools and turned to face her. We don't want to be valuable because we're good at fighting. We want to be valuable because we're good colleagues, friends, builders. We want to be known for what we create, not what we destroy. You can be both, Isul said. What I saw at that station wasn't just destruction. You protected people. You saved lives. That's creation too, in a way. Daehyun considered that. Maybe. The galaxy needs to understand humans better, Isul continued. Not just your strength or your combat skills, but your choices. You could have stayed hidden, let the security team handle everything, but you chose to help. You chose to risk yourselves for strangers. That says more about humans than any combat footage. You really believe that? I do. Isul stood up and walked closer to him. That day when I sat on you as a prank, I woke something up. But it wasn't a beast. It was just truth. You're not what you seemed, but you're also not what everyone thinks now. You're somewhere in between. Complicated and careful and kind. Daehyun smiled slightly. That's the nicest way anyone's ever called me complicated. I have a talent for it. Isul hesitated, then asked the question she'd been building up to. When you looked at me after the rescue, there was something in your expression. What were you thinking? That I was glad you were safe. Daehyun's voice was quiet. That despite everything, despite the fighting and the danger, you were okay. And that mattered more to me than it probably should. Isul felt her heart beat faster. Why shouldn't it matter? Because you're Valeth. I'm human. We're from different worlds, different species. There are complications. You keep saying things are complicated. Isul stepped closer. What if I don't care about complicated? Then you're braver than most. I sat on a sleeping human soldier as a prank and survived. I think we've established I'm not afraid of taking risks. She was close enough now to take his hand. I want to know you better. Not the soldier, not just the engineer, all of it. The complicated parts. Daehyun looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. That could take a while. Good thing we're on a ship traveling through deep space. We have time. He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. You're impossible. I'm persistent. There's a difference. Over the following weeks and months, their relationship deepened. Isul learned about Earth, about Korean culture, about Daehyun's past and his hopes for the future. He told her stories about his military service, the friends he'd lost, the choices he'd made. She shared her own history, her family, her dreams of exploring the galaxy. They were different in so many ways, but they fit together somehow. Her boldness balanced his caution. His calm steadied her impulsiveness. They learned from each other, grew together. The human crew members on the Stellar Harmony remained in their chosen roles. They were engineers, technicians, administrators. They worked hard and contributed to the ship's mission, but everyone knew now that if danger came, if the crew needed protection, the humans would step forward. They were warriors who chose peace, protectors who preferred building, soldiers who'd become something more. One evening, 6 months after the rescue, Daehyun and Isol stood in the observation deck watching stars stream past. The galaxy was vast and beautiful,